welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. Tonight's discussion is about two things. Number one, man's best friend. Number two, unconditional love. It's probably not too difficult to figure how those two concepts are combined. I've made some observations in my own life and figure they will provide a refreshing way of thinking about things for those of you who have gotten involved with the Cluster B creatures and adapted your life and broke your own rules and stepped over your own boundaries to accommodate foolishly. I am going to provide a comparison. Dogs are called man's best friend for a reason. Well, dogs give something that we hear about called unconditional love. Now, what does that mean? Well, a condition would be a rule or a stipulation. Sounds like, I'll give you love as long as you do this. With a dog, it's a different story. A dog is real. When you get your dog and you raise it, grow with it, and discover its little things it does that are funny, more funny than the television in many cases, after you've had your little dog for a while, you will learn various traits that they possess. For example, I had a sweet little boy named Bandit for 17 years. He was very intelligent, and in the kitchen I had this one particular cabinet which had doggy stuff in it. It had his leash, it had his harness, it also had toothpaste, toothbrushes, regular brushes, nail clippers, some of the things that the dogs found to be horrific. He did not like to have his teeth brushed, nor did he like his nails clipped. But the thing was, he always assumed positive intent because every time I walked over to that cabinet, opened it up, he'd be right there with his face in and his ears up, looking at everything I was doing, knowing that chances are I could pull out a leash and a harness, then he'd start barking and get going crazy, or I could pull out something else. And it was always funny because he'd be there and put his nose in, and as soon as he saw the nail clipper in my hand, he would immediately turn the other way and run off. Or if I grabbed the toothbrush, he'd run off. Still, it didn't ever deter him from being interested because I guess he always felt there might be the possibility that he's going to get to go for a walk, which I used to have to say a W, because if I said walk and didn't do it, he'd be devastated and go crazy. That's just one little piece of information about a dog that tells you their personality, which means I know that any time I go to that cabinet, that's what would happen. Predictable. They're also very loyal creatures. I did certain things to them they didn't like, such as brush teeth, clip their nails, and they hated it, but they didn't turn on their daddy. I hope that they knew somehow that was to help them. Dogs are unconditionally loving, meaning you can yell at them for wetting on the floor, say, don't you go potty on that floor, be stern and strict with them, and the ears will go down. But you know that if you leave and go to work or go out shopping, and when you come back, that dog is going to be just as happy to see you as it would have been had you not yelled at it. That's unconditional. You also know what your dog does. Like if one day come in secretly, you find out the dog sleeps in one particular space. It's going to be there. It's something you can count on. I know that the doggies, when they were older, would always go into the study, this room here, the office. They'd always be in their little beds. So I would know if I came home and needed one of them, I knew right where to go, and there they were. When they were younger at the other houses I was in, the girl did something cute where I had this gigantic walk-in closet, and I'd go in there sometimes, and I'd look down, and there she'd be laying on top of a sweater on a bottom shelf of the of the walk-in closet, and I would just think she was the cutest thing laying there. She found her own place to sleep. The reason I'm bringing all this up is that these are predictable things, and it also involves the unconditional love. Even if you punish them, they're going to still love you later. If we contrast that with the Cluster B creatures, if, for example, let's say you're at home with your dog, and you've got to go to work. Well, the doggy wants to go with you. The doggy wants to ride in the car. And you tell them, oh, I can't, I've got to go to work. I'll come back later. When you come back later, that dog is going to be wagging its tail, panting, and happy to see you. Contrast that with your Cluster B creature. You do something it doesn't like. You disappoint it in some way and leave. When you come back, guess what? That person will probably ignore you, avoid you, or be absent. Completely different. They're conditional, disloyal. Which I understand if someone does something horrible, you may want to step back and just not interact for a while. But dogs don't do that. Even if they didn't want to be punished for urinating on the floor, they're still overjoyed to see you. Like I mentioned with your dog, when you leave, you know it's probably up in that bedroom and that bed sleeping or doing whatever it does. But with your narcissist Cluster B Creature, when you're not with it, who knows where it is, what it's doing, what it's saying, what it's lying about, who it's making lust to. You don't have to worry when you leave and go to work that your dog is going to sneak out of your home and go find another family to live with, disappear, or do that when you're gone and then run back and act like it's your pet when it comes back to your home. They're not like that. The narcissist Cluster Bs are. They will pretend to be what they think you want them to be just to get whatever supply they're getting out of you, and then when you're gone, they're a completely different person. Fake. They play act. I've heard, as I mentioned in the previous video, how some will actually make conditions to you.
I'll be your lover as long as you follow these rules.
I don't want rules. If we're meant to be together, we're meant to be together. Who are you to make special rules? What about my needs? Those aren't considered. They're simply covered up with, well, you'll be treated like a king or a queen. When I heard that, I thought, that's fake. Yeah, you can put on an act. Well, anybody can do that, but it's not genuine. So the doggies that are your man's best friend are something we can learn from. Learn unconditional love. I learned other things from them, too, such as the girl dog, Jade. She was diagnosed with Cushing's disease at a very early age, and there wasn't much research out about that. The only studies I found were awful, saying that, oh, she's lived for a year. I didn't like the idea of that, but I read that one of the symptoms was possible blindness. She was the sweetest little girl doggy creature, and I just couldn't imagine the idea. But at that time, when she was young, I remember thinking, oh, if she became blind, she wouldn't be able to live anymore, which I've never put a dog to sleep. I would think, oh no, I'd be forced with a decision to have to consider that. Oh, guess what? She proved that wrong. She ended up teaching her daddy some things. She lost her eyesight eventually. She was blind. Certainly before I figured, well, that's the end of her life. She has nothing else she can do. But that's not the case. Those creatures are amazing. I took her to a special eye doctor. She agreed. This dog was able to navigate around the house. If you didn't know she was blind, you wouldn't know. A typical day would be, I'd bring her to her bed, she'd sleep in it, and I'd go down and feed her. She was litter box trained, they both were, but they'd go potty, or I'd take them outside. What she would do all on her own, because she was tough, Bandit was littler, she would go potty outside, and then she would make her way up the steps of the deck, into the back door, pushed open with her nose, and she would walk across the kitchen, across the dining room, turn. She would then go to the staircase. She did have a little rhythm. She'd walk up the steps. Her little legs were so cute, and I wish I would have filmed it with her dress on. She would have her back legs like this. They'd stand on a step, and then she'd do this, and then jump. And then she'd do the jump all the way up, and it was just cute. And then she'd stop at the landing and look. She'd always look down. She, of course, couldn't see at this point, but I think she was listening. Predictable! It was cute. But then she would make it up the rest of the way to the steps, and then she'd go into her little bed and lay down in it without being able to see. I thought if I woke up tomorrow blind, I'd probably think, oh, the world's over. These creatures are amazing, and they adapt. So the main point of this video is to learn from your furry friends. They can teach us things. We can teach them things. When the boy lost his eyesight, I taught him how to go down the steps by using his side against the wall. And I'd be there with him. I'd say, okay, let's go down the steps. Because when he first lost his eyesight, it was really quick. He would just lay in his bed. He wouldn't go anywhere. He wouldn't move. And I thought, you can't lay in your bed all day and night not doing anything. So I'd get him to branch out, and I'd tell him, I'm here for you. Your daddy's here. I'd take him down the steps, sit down with him, go down each one, and show him how he could find leverage by just brushing up against the wall. That'll keep him steady and keep him in direction. And he did it. It was a wonderful feeling to do that with him a few times and then know he's upstairs, and then look when I'm downstairs and there he is. He's doing it. They were very intelligent. But if you're away from your narcissist creature and it's gone, think about these types of things and compare it to how that creature was and how it demanded you did this and that, or it wouldn't give you anything, and how much better it is when dealing with a canine. Dogs love unconditionally. We could learn a thing or two from them.
I'm the Narcopath that you dream about, aren't I? I've got a few more confessions for you. How do you like that?
As you probably know, I ain't got no soul. That means nothing about my vocal abilities, because I'm the best singer there is in the world. Jesus! See? I'm making this video without TJ's knowledge because he's out of town and he didn't realize I've got a special way out of my cage. The truth of the matter is, I ain't got a soul. So what? Sue me. What good's a soul anyway? I've been talking to people, pretending to be like them, listening to them. They talk about this soul, and I ain't got it. They talk about what they think about during the day and how they feel about possibly hurting someone's feelings, or maybe being rejected, and I think, hogwash! I don't feel that way, but I just kept it to myself because I couldn't stand out. I'm trying to infiltrate some empaths. They don't need to know that I'm an imposter. Besides, you all call it supply. I call it my happiness. I'm happy if I find someone that falls for my stuff. And my thoughts are if they're dumb enough to fall for my scams and games, sometimes even catching me at it, and they still stick around, well, honey, that's their own fault then. They deserve whatever I give them. Who do they think they are complaining afterwards when they find out all the things I've done? That's their problem. Yeah! I'm happy tonight. I've got another victory on my hands. You know, there was a guy who sued my company for my artificial Virginia that was a replica of mine. Because we dated, my Virginia, he knew was a lot looser than that thing because it was molded after a teenager. He sued, and he won. Well, guess what his reward was from me? That's right, it was me. I saw to it that he was drugged with 6 doses of Ambien, and then his house just accidentally caught on fire, burning it up with him in it. He deserved it. How dare he sue my company for... It's my Virginia. Face it. Can't all be perfect. It was just altered a little, I said. But they weren't buying it in the court, and he had the nerve to take it to courtroom, and the judge was getting off during it, I can tell. Regardless, he paid his price. Don't cross the Narcopath. I'm gonna change my last name to Clinton. I'd fit in well there.
Are you drunk enough not to judge what I'm doing? Are you high enough to excuse that I'm ruined? 'Cause I'm ruined. Is it late enough for you to come and stay over? 'Cause we're free to love, to tease me. Ooh. I make no promises, I can't just golden ring, but I'll give you everything. My dick is in the air, there ain't no science here. I come get your everything tonight. I make no promises, I can't do golden rings, but I'll give you everything tonight. My dick is in the air, there ain't no science here. I come get your everything tonight.